What if I told you there's a mirror that's killed 17 people, and it did it by showing them something they were never supposed to see? Deep in Louisiana, inside one of America's most haunted plantations, there hangs a mirror where handprints appear but no one touches it, where faces emerge that belong to no one in the room. They say if you stare into this mirror long enough, you'll see the exact moment of your own death. Thousands have tried. Some never came back. This is the cursed mirror of the Myrtles Plantation, and this story is completely real.
Subscribe to the channel, or I'll show you your future in the mirror.
December 1980. A young couple from Baton Rouge decided to spend their honeymoon at the Myrtles Plantation, now converted into a bed and breakfast. The wife, Margaret Chen, was an amateur photographer. She loved capturing old architecture, antiques, anything with history. On their second night, she stood in the hallway on the second floor, admiring a large French mirror with an ornate gold frame. Her husband was in the shower. She raised her camera and took 3 photographs of her reflection. When she developed those photos 2 weeks later, her hands started shaking. In the first photo, her reflection looked normal. In the second, standing behind her in the mirror was a young girl in a green dress, maybe 7 or 8 years old. Margaret had been alone in that hallway, but the third photograph made her drop the entire stack. Her own reflection was gone. Only the little girl remained, staring directly at the camera with hollow, black eyes. Margaret tried to convince herself it was a double exposure, a trick of light, anything rational. But 3 months later, she received a call from the plantation's owner. They'd found her name in the guest book and wanted to ask her something. Had she experienced anything unusual during her stay? Margaret hesitated, then mentioned the photographs. There was a long silence on the other end. Then the owner said something that made Margaret's blood run cold. "You're the 7th person to photograph that girl in the mirror. The other 6 are all dead." This wasn't the owner trying to scare tourists. This was genuine fear in his voice. He explained that over the past 15 years, 6 different guests had captured the same image of a child in that specific mirror. All 6 had died within a year of their visit. Car accidents, sudden illnesses. One woman simply didn't wake up one morning, perfectly healthy the night before. Margaret hung up the phone and immediately threw away the photographs. She's still alive today, now in her 70s, but she refuses to look at mirrors in dim lighting. She refuses to talk about what else she saw that night at the Myrtles Plantation. So what is this mirror? Why does it show things that aren't there? The year was 1796. General David Bradford stood on empty Louisiana land, envisioning his grand plantation home. An elderly Tunica man approached him that afternoon, speaking carefully. Their people had buried loved ones here for countless generations. The earth held bones, memories, spirits that shouldn't be disturbed. Bradford laughed it off as superstition. He broke ground the following week, his workers unearthing fragments of pottery and bone with every shovel of dirt. Bradford completed his grand plantation home and married Elizabeth. They started a family, but the curse of the disturbed burial ground had already begun. Their first child died at birth. The second lived for 3 days. The third made it to 6 months before succumbing to yellow fever. Elizabeth fell into a deep depression. She would walk the halls at night, talking to children who weren't there, setting places at the dinner table for babies who never grew up. Bradford brought in doctors, priests, anyone who might help his wife. Nothing worked. Then one night in 1804, Elizabeth walked out onto the second-floor balcony and jumped. Bradford found her body in the garden at sunrise. He sold the plantation within a month and never spoke of Louisiana again. The new owner was Judge Clark Woodruff. He moved in with his wife Sara and their 2 young daughters in 1817. Sara was a kind woman, beloved by everyone who knew her. She treated the enslaved people working the plantation with unusual compassion for that era, often nursing them when they fell ill, teaching the children to read in secret. The house staff adored her. But Judge Woodruff had made enemies. He was known for harsh sentences, for sending men to hang with little evidence. One of those men had a brother named Rufus, and Rufus worked at the Myrtles Plantation. It was a normal Tuesday morning in 1823 when Rufus baked a birthday cake for the judge's youngest daughter. He mixed in oleander leaves, a deadly poison that grows wild in Louisiana. The whole family ate the cake at lunch. By evening, Sara and both daughters were violently ill. The judge had only eaten a small piece and survived. But Sara and the girls died in agony over the next 3 days. The judge was destroyed. He'd lost his entire family. He had that French mirror installed in the hallway outside their bedrooms, covered in black cloth as was customary during mourning periods. According to tradition, you cover mirrors when someone dies so their soul doesn't get trapped in the reflection. But Judge Woodruff, mad with grief, never uncovered it. They say Sara's spirit, along with her daughters, became trapped in that mirror, trapped in the moment of their death, unable to move on. The judge would spend hours staring at the covered mirror, convinced he could hear his daughters playing behind the black fabric. Servants reported seeing him having conversations with the cloth-covered glass, laughing at jokes only he could hear. Then one morning in 1871, Judge Woodruff was found dead at the base of that same mirror. His face was frozen in an expression of absolute terror. The black cloth had been torn away, and on the mirror's surface were dozens of small handprints, like children had been pressing their palms against the glass from the inside. The plantation changed hands 7 more times over the next century. Every single owner reported the same phenomena. Handprints appearing on the mirror that couldn't be cleaned off. The sounds of children giggling coming from empty rooms. Cold spots that moved through the hallways like invisible people walking past you. But the mirror was the epicenter. People would see figures moving in its reflection that weren't in the room. Some saw the little girls in their white nightgowns. Others saw Sara, still beautiful but with dark, hollow eyes, reaching out from behind the glass as if trying to escape. In 1927, a family from New Orleans bought the plantation. They had 3 children of their own. The youngest, a boy named Thomas, was 5 years old. On their first night in the house, Thomas woke up screaming. His parents ran to his room and found him standing in the hallway, staring at the mirror. He was talking to someone, having a full conversation, but no one else was there. When his father picked him up, Thomas pointed at the mirror and said, "The sad lady wants to show me something." His father looked at the reflection and saw his son standing there. But behind Thomas in the mirror, barely visible, was the outline of a woman in a long dress. She was pointing down the hallway toward the main staircase. The father carried Thomas back to bed, but the boy kept insisting the sad lady had something important to tell him. The next morning, the father decided to follow where the woman had been pointing. He walked down to the main staircase and noticed something odd about the 3rd step from the bottom. The sound was hollow. He pried up the wooden board and found a small space underneath. Inside was a locked metal box. When he finally got it open, he found letters. Love letters between Sara Woodruff and one of the plantation workers, a man named William. The letters revealed that Sara had known about the poisoned cake. Rufus had told her what he'd done, begging her not to eat it, but she'd chosen to anyway. She couldn't live with the guilt of her husband's harsh judgments anymore. She'd let herself and her daughters die as punishment for her husband's sins. The father burned those letters immediately. He never told anyone what they said. But Thomas continued to see the woman in the mirror for the next 3 months. She would appear every night, always pointing, always trying to show him something. Then one night, Thomas didn't wake up. He died in his sleep, no medical explanation. He was a perfectly healthy 5-year-old boy who simply stopped breathing. The family moved out the next day, leaving most of their belongings behind. They never came back. By the 1970s, the Myrtles Plantation had a reputation. Locals knew to stay away. But it caught the attention of James Myers, a paranormal investigator from California who didn't believe in ghosts. He'd spent 20 years debunking haunted houses, exposing frauds, explaining away supernatural phenomena with science and logic. The Myrtles Plantation was supposed to be his masterpiece, the definitive proof that ghosts don't exist. He arrived in October 1975 with a whole team, cameras, electromagnetic field detectors, thermal imaging, everything. They set up equipment throughout the house, but especially around that mirror. For the first 2 nights, nothing happened. Myers was confident. He'd been sitting in front of the mirror for hours, recording everything, taking measurements. On the 3rd night, at exactly 3:17 a.m., every piece of equipment in the house went dead simultaneously. Complete power failure. Myers lit a candle and walked to the mirror. In his report, later found in his hotel room, he wrote that he saw his own reflection clearly in the candlelight. Then, slowly, his reflection began to change. It aged right before his eyes. He watched himself grow old, watched his hair turn white, watched his face become gaunt and skeletal. He watched himself die in that mirror. And behind his dying reflection, he saw them, Sara and her daughters, pressing their hands against the glass, their mouths open in silent screams. Myers ran from the house. His team found him the next morning sitting in his car, staring straight ahead, completely unresponsive. He was taken to a psychiatric hospital where he remained for 3 months, unable to speak, unable to function. When he finally recovered enough to talk, he would only say one thing over and over. "I saw when I die. I saw exactly when I die." James Myers committed suicide in 1982. On the date he claimed he'd seen in the mirror. The plantation was eventually purchased by the current owners in 1992, who decided to embrace the haunted history and turn it into a tourist destination. They offer ghost tours, let people stay overnight, even encourage visitors to take photographs of the mirror. Thousands of people have tried to capture evidence of the paranormal. Most get nothing, but some get more than they bargained for. In 2003, a digital photograph taken by a tourist showed 9 handprints on the mirror's surface. The woman who took the photo counted them carefully. 9 prints, but Sara only had 2 daughters. Who else is trapped in that mirror? Security footage from 2011 shows something even more disturbing. At 2:47 a.m., a figure appears in front of the mirror in the 2nd floor hallway. This translucent, barely visible, but clearly the shape of a woman in a long dress. She stands there for exactly 3 minutes, then simply fades away. But before she disappears, she turns toward the camera. Her face is Sara Woodruff, matching every historical photograph of her. And she's crying. Paranormal investigators have tried everything to understand this mirror. Some believe it's a portal, a thin place where the barrier between our world and whatever comes next has worn through. Others think the mirror itself absorbed the trauma of Sara's death, that objects can hold emotional energy like a battery holds electrical charge. One physicist proposed that the mercury used in antique mirrors might create some kind of quantum effect we don't understand, literally recording moments in time and playing them back under certain conditions. But none of these theories explain why people who photograph the mirror sometimes see their own deaths. In 2015, a graduate student named Rebecca Torres decided to make the Myrtles mirror the subject of her thesis on mass hysteria and the power of suggestion. She was a skeptic, convinced that people were seeing what they expected to see, that the whole thing was confirmation bias and tourist trap theatrics. She spent a week at the plantation, documenting everything, interviewing witnesses, analyzing photographs. On her last night, she set up a camera on a tripod pointing directly at the mirror and recorded herself sitting in front of it for 4 hours straight. She wanted to prove nothing would happen. The footage shows Rebecca sitting calmly for the first 3 hours. She's reading a book, occasionally glancing at the mirror, clearly bored. Then, at the 3-hour and 17-minute mark, she stops reading. She's staring at the mirror. Her book falls from her hands. She stands up slowly, walks toward the mirror, and places both palms against the glass. She stands like that for 42 seconds. Then she starts screaming. Not words, just raw, primal screaming. She backs away from the mirror, trips over the tripod, and runs from the room. The camera keeps recording the empty hallway for another hour. At several points, shadows move across the mirror's surface even though nothing is there to cast them. Rebecca Torres withdrew from her graduate program. She moved back home to Ohio and refuses to discuss what she saw. But her roommate later revealed that Rebecca had nightmares every night for months afterward. She would wake up screaming about drowning, about not being able to breathe, about something pulling her down. Rebecca had never feared water before. She'd been a competitive swimmer in college. But after that night at the Myrtles, she couldn't even take a bath without having a panic attack. In 2019, Rebecca Torres drowned in a lake near her home. The coroner ruled it an accident, but her family insists she was an expert swimmer who'd never go into deep water alone. They believe she saw her death in that mirror. And it came true. The current owners of the Myrtles have strict rules now. You can photograph the mirror, but they strongly discourage anyone from touching it. They won't let anyone stay in the rooms on either side of it overnight. And they've installed a permanent camera monitoring the hallway 24 hours a day. Not to capture evidence of ghosts, but to make sure no one does something stupid. Because the mirror is still active, still showing people things they shouldn't see. Just last year, a woman on a ghost tour took a selfie in front of the mirror using her phone. When she looked at the photo, standing directly behind her in the reflection was herself. Not her current self, but an older version, maybe 20 or 30 years older. And that older version was holding a baby. The woman is only 23. She's never been pregnant. She showed the photo to the tour guide, who'd seen dozens of strange photographs from that mirror. But even he looked disturbed, because in the photo, the older version of the woman wasn't smiling. She looked terrified, and the baby she was holding wasn't moving. 6 months later, that woman died in a car accident. She was pregnant. The baby didn't survive either. Scientific teams have analyzed the mirror multiple times. They've found nothing unusual about its physical composition. It's just glass and mercury, the same as any antique mirror from that period. The frame is hand-carved wood covered in gold leaf. Expensive but not unique. There's no logical reason this specific mirror should be any different from thousands of others exactly like it. But it is different. Everyone who spends time near it can feel it. There's a weight to the air around that mirror, a pressure that makes it hard to breathe. People report feeling watched, feeling like something is trying to communicate, trying to warn them or maybe lure them closer. Some paranormal researchers believe the mirror has become a beacon, that Sara and her daughters aren't the only spirits trapped there anymore. Every person who's died after seeing something in that mirror, every soul that made contact with whatever exists on the other side of that glass, they might all be stuck there now. The mirror might be collecting them, adding to its power, becoming stronger with each new victim. If that's true, then touching that mirror, staring into it too long, trying to communicate with whatever's inside, you're not just risking seeing your own death. You're risking becoming part of the mirror itself, trapped forever behind that glass, pressing your handprints against it from the inside, trying desperately to warn the next person who gets too close. The Myrtles Plantation still operates as a bed and breakfast. You can book a room right now if you want. They'll give you a tour, tell you the history, let you take all the photographs you want. And if you're brave enough, they'll let you stand in front of that mirror. They'll let you stare into your own reflection and wait to see what appears. Most people see nothing. Most people take their selfie, feel a little creeped out by the atmosphere, and go home with a good story. But some people see exactly what Margaret Chen saw in 1980. Some people see what James Myers saw in 1975. Some people see what Rebecca Torres saw in 2015. They see the truth that none of us want to acknowledge. That death is always there, just on the other side of the reflection, waiting patiently. And sometimes, If the barrier is thin enough, if the mirror has absorbed enough tragedy and pain and fear, it can show you what's waiting. It can show you the exact moment when your reflection will stop moving, when your eyes will go dark, when you'll cross over to whatever comes next. And once you've seen it, once you know exactly how and when you're going to die, that knowledge changes you. The presence follows you. Some believe it can even cause what you saw, a self-fulfilling prophecy, written in mercury and glass. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. If you ever find yourself standing in that hallway at the Myrtles Plantation, if you ever get the chance to look into that cursed mirror, do you really want to know? Do you want to see what's waiting for you on the other side? Because once you look, once you really look, you can never unsee it. And you'll spend every day after counting down to the moment you saw in that reflection, wondering if today is the day, if this is how it happens, if what you saw was real or just a nightmare you can't wake up from. The mirror is still hanging there, still waiting, still showing people things they were never meant to see. And somewhere behind that glass, Sara Woodruff and her daughters are still trapped, still trying to warn us, still pressing their small handprints against the surface, hoping someone will finally understand. The dead don't rest at the Myrtles Plantation. They watch, they wait, and sometimes they reach out through that mirror to pull you closer to the truth you've been running from your entire life. That death isn't some distant concept. It's right there in your reflection, staring back at you, counting down the seconds until you meet face to face.